The apartment felt different now, quieter, somehow more complete. Elena Ramirez stood in the doorway of what had been her bedroom for the past 8 years, now transformed into a nursery, painted in soft sage green. She adjusted baby Mateo in her arms, marveling at how something so small could make a space feel so full of purpose. "Welcome home, mi amor," she whispered against his downy head, breathing in that distinctive newborn scent that made her heart swell with fierce protectiveness. The past 3 days at the hospital had been a whirlwind of sleepless nights, learning to breastfeed, and the constant parade of nurses checking her vitals. But it had also been magical, those quiet moments when it was just her and Mateo, when she could hardly believe this perfect little person was really hers. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elena had spent the entire pregnancy preparing for this moment. She'd read every parenting book she could get her hands on, attended birthing classes alone while other couples held hands, and carefully budgeted every penny to ensure she could take the full 12 weeks of maternity leave from her nursing job at St. Mary's Hospital. At 31, she'd made the conscious decision that she didn't need a man to complete her family. She was complete enough on her own. The decision hadn't been easy. When she'd broken up with Miguel 18 months ago, she'd thought she was giving up her chance at motherhood. Miguel had been charming, handsome, and utterly unreliable. He'd promised her the world while borrowing money he never repaid, talking about marriage while flirting with other women, speaking of children while refusing to commit to anything beyond the next weekend. The final straw had been finding out about his gambling debt, money he'd lost while she was working double shifts to help pay his rent. "I deserve better than this," she'd told herself the night she packed his things and left them outside her door. It had been the hardest decision of her life, but also the most liberating. 3 months later, a routine visit to her gynecologist had revealed a surprise that changed everything. She was already 8 weeks pregnant, a result of one of their last nights together before the breakup. The doctor had given her options, but Elena had known immediately what she wanted to do. "I'm having this baby," she'd said out loud in the parking lot, her hands instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "We're going to be just fine, you and me." And they would be. Elena had spent months getting everything ready. The nursery was painted and furnished with careful attention to safety and comfort rather than expense. She joined online support groups for single mothers, found a reliable babysitter for when she returned to work, and even started a small college fund in Mateo's name. The only thing that had worried her was her family's reaction. Her mother, Carmen, had been supportive but concerned about Elena's choice to raise a child alone. "Mija, it's going to be so hard," she'd said during one of their weekly phone calls. "Are you sure you don't want to try to work things out with Miguel?" Elena had been firm. "Miguel made his choices, Mama. Now I'm making mine." Her younger sister, Marissa, had been more directly critical. "Don't you think it's selfish to bring a child into the world without a father?" she'd asked during her baby shower, her voice loud enough for several relatives to overhear. "What if something happens to you? What if you can't handle it alone?" Elena had brushed off the comments then, attributing them to her own frustrations with her on-again, off-again relationship with her boyfriend, Carlos. But now, settling into her apartment with Mateo, she couldn't shake the memory of her sister's disapproving tone. The apartment felt like a sanctuary. Elena had lived here since nursing school, gradually making it her own, with plants that thrived in the eastern windows, photographs from family gatherings and girls' trips with friends, and artwork from local artists she'd discovered at weekend markets. It wasn't large, just 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen, and a living room. But it was hers, and now it was Mateo's too. She settled into the rocking chair she'd found at a consignment store and lovingly restored, testing the gentle rhythm that had soothed Mateo through our first nights in the hospital. Outside, the sounds of the city hummed with familiar comfort. Traffic on the street below, children playing in the courtyard, the distant sound of music from someone's radio. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend and coworker, David Miller. How's the first day home going? Need anything from the store? Elena smiled as she typed back with one hand while Mateo dozed in her arms. Perfect so far. Rain check on groceries. We're having a bonding afternoon. David had been her rock throughout the pregnancy, covering her shifts when morning sickness hit, driving her to appointments when she felt too tired, and even painting the nursery on his weekend off. He'd never made her feel judged or pitied for her choice to become a single mother. Instead, he told her repeatedly how lucky Mateo was to have her. That baby is going to have the best mom, he said the day before her due date. He's going to grow up knowing he was wanted and loved from the very beginning. Elena looked down at Mateo's sleeping face, his tiny fist curled against her chest. David was right. This baby had been wanted with an intensity that sometimes took her breath away. Every kick during pregnancy, every ultrasound image, every piece of clothing she'd carefully washed and folded had been an act of love and anticipation. Her phone rang, startling Mateo slightly. Carmen's name appeared on the screen. Hola, mama. Elena answered softly. Mija, how are you feeling? Is the baby sleeping well? We're both good, just enjoying being home. I'm so proud of you, Elena. You handled everything so beautifully at the hospital. Your strength amazes me. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother's support meant everything, especially after months of well-meaning but anxious questions about her readiness for single motherhood. Thank you, Mama. That means so much. I was thinking I could come over tomorrow with some food. I made that chicken soup you love, and I have some casseroles in the freezer.
That would be wonderful. You know you don't need to take care of us, though. It's what families do, Mija. We take care of each other. After they hung up, Elena felt a wave of contentment wash over her. This was what she'd hoped for: family support, a healthy baby, and the quiet confidence that she'd made the right choice. She'd worked hard to build a stable life for herself, and now for Mateo. Her job as a pediatric nurse provided good insurance and steady income, she had savings in the bank, and she'd proven to herself that she could handle anything life threw at her. The afternoon light was starting to fade when Mateo stirred and began to fuss. Elena shifted him to her shoulder, patting his back gently as she walked to the kitchen to warm a bottle. She tried breastfeeding exclusively at the hospital, but supplementing with formula gave her more flexibility and ensured Mateo was getting enough nutrition. As she waited for the bottle to warm, her phone buzzed with another text. This one was from Marisa. "Heard you're home. Carlos and I want to meet our nephew. Can we come by tonight?" Elena hesitated. She loved her sister, but Marissa's energy could be overwhelming on the best of days, and Elena was still recovering from delivery. But family was family, and she wanted Mateo to have relationships with his aunts and uncles. "Maybe tomorrow. Still settling in today," she replied. The response came immediately. "Fine, but don't keep us waiting too long. Family should come first, you know." Something about the message made Elena frown. There was an edge to it that seemed unnecessarily sharp, but she was too tired to analyze it further. She'd deal with whatever mood Marissa was in tomorrow. For now, she had everything she needed: a healthy baby, a warm home, and the unshakable knowledge that she'd made the right choice for both of them.
"If you say so. You're the nurse." Again, that edge in Marissa's voice, as if Elena's professional knowledge was somehow suspect. They sat in the living room making small talk about Elena's maternity leave plans and Mateo's sleeping schedule. Carmen dominated the conversation, sharing stories about Elena and Marissa's own baby days with the delight of a woman who'd waited years to become a grandmother. "Elena was such an easy baby," she was saying. "Slept through the night by 2 months. But Marissa, ay, Dios mío, she had colic for 4 months straight. I thought I was going to lose my mind." "I was probably just more demanding," Marissa said, with a laugh that sounded forced. "I knew what I wanted." "You certainly did, and if you didn't get it immediately, the whole neighborhood knew about it." Elena noticed Carlos checking his phone repeatedly and wondered if he was as uncomfortable with family time as he appeared to be. He'd never seemed entirely at ease with the Ramirez family dynamics, though Elena had always attributed that to his own difficult relationship with his parents. We should probably get going, Marissa said, after about an hour, standing abruptly. I'm sure Elena needs her rest. So soon? Carmen looked disappointed. I was hoping we could all have lunch together. Another time, Mama. Elena looks exhausted. Elena bristled at her sister's presumption about her energy level, but she was actually feeling tired and didn't want to prolong the visit if Marissa was in an odd mood. Thanks for coming by, she said, walking them to the door. It means a lot that you wanted to meet him. Of course, he's family. Marissa kissed Elena's cheek, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Take care of yourself, Hermana. Single motherhood is going to be harder than you think. After they left, Carmen stayed another hour, helping Elena organize the nursery and preparing a few bottles for the night feedings. But even her mother's comforting presence couldn't shake the unsettled feeling that had taken root during Marissa's visit. Is everything okay between you and Marissa? Carmen asked as she was getting ready to leave. I think so. Why? She seemed, I don't know, different today, more tense than usual. Elena considered this. Marissa had gotten increasingly critical of Elena's choices over the past year, not just about the pregnancy and single motherhood, but about everything from Elena's career focus to her decision to stay in the same apartment instead of buying a house. She's probably stressed about Carlos, Elena said finally. You know how those two are. Carmen nodded, but didn't look entirely convinced. Just remember, mija, that people sometimes say things they don't mean when they're unhappy with their own lives. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself. After her mother left, Elena found herself replaying the visit in her mind. Marissa's intense scrutiny of Mateo's face, her comments about the baby's appearance, the strange tension that had filled the room, none of it felt quite normal. But maybe she was overthinking it. New motherhood was overwhelming enough without looking for problems that might not exist. Elena settled into the rocking chair with Mateo for his afternoon feeding, determined to focus on what mattered, this perfect little person who was entirely, undoubtedly hers. Still, as she watched Mateo's tiny fingers curl around hers, she couldn't shake the memory of the expression on Marissa's face, calculating and cold in a way that made Elena's stomach tighten with unidentifiable dread. The first week at home passed in a blur of feeding schedules, diaper changes, and the surreal adjustment to life with a newborn. Elena's world had contracted to the comfortable boundaries of her apartment, where every decision revolved around Mateo's needs and her own recovery. David stopped by twice, bringing groceries and takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. His easy presence was a relief after the tension of Marissa's visit, and Elena found herself looking forward to his company more than she'd expected. You're a natural at this, he told her on Thursday evening, watching as she efficiently changed Mateo's diaper while carrying on a conversation. Some of the new moms we see at the hospital are complete wrecks for the first month. I have good instincts, I guess, Elena replied, lifting Mateo to her shoulder for burping. Plus, I've had plenty of practice with other people's babies at work. It's different when it's your own, though. Everything is more intense when it's your own. David settled back into the couch, looking more relaxed than Elena had seen him in months. At work, he was always in motion, checking on patients, charting medications, mediating between doctors and families. Here, in her living room, he seemed content to simply exist in the peaceful bubble she'd created. Any word from Miguel? He asked carefully. Elena had told David about the pregnancy early on, including the complicated situation with Mateo's father. Miguel had moved back to Phoenix shortly after our breakup, taking a job with his uncle's landscaping business. When Elena had finally tracked him down to tell him about the pregnancy, his response had been swift and unambiguous. I can't be a dad right now. I've got too much of my own stuff to figure out. If you want to have the baby, that's your choice, but don't expect me to be involved. It had stung, but it had also been a relief. Elena had known that Miguel's involvement would have meant complications, drama, and constant negotiations about decisions large and small. His absence, while painful in some ways, also meant freedom to raise Mateo according to her own values and instincts. "Nothing," Elena replied to David's question, "and that's probably for the best. Have you thought about what you'll tell Mateo when he's older? That his father wasn't ready to be a parent, and that sometimes the most loving thing someone can do is acknowledge that honestly." Elena adjusted Mateo's position against her chest. "I'd rather he grow up knowing he was completely wanted by the parent who chose to be here." David nodded approvingly. "He's lucky to have you."
It was exactly what Elena needed to hear after a week of second-guessing every decision, from feeding schedules to sleep positions. David's confidence in her abilities felt like a lifeline during moments when the enormity of single parenthood threatened to overwhelm her. Friday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Elena was still in her pajamas, having been up since 4 a.m. with a fussy Mateo, when her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw her Aunt Rosa holding a covered dish and wearing the determined expression that usually preceded unsolicited advice. Rosa was Carmen's younger sister, a woman who'd raised 3 children as a single mother after her husband left when the youngest was only 2. She'd always been Elena's champion in the family, the one relative who understood the strength required to build a life on your own terms. "Mija, you look terrible," Rosa announced as Elena opened the door, her tone somehow managing to be both critical and loving simultaneously. "Thank you, Tia. That's exactly what every new mother wants to hear. I brought chicken and rice. Real food, not those frozen things your mother keeps pushing." Rosa swept into the apartment, immediately heading for the kitchen. "Where's my great-nephew?" "Sleeping, finally. He was up most of the night." "Good. That means we can talk." Elena felt a flicker of anxiety. Rosa's serious conversations usually involved family drama or unwanted revelations about people's personal lives. About what? Rosa was busy unpacking food from her bag, but she paused to give Elena a sharp look. "About your sister." "What about Marissa?" "She's been asking a lot of questions." Elena sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly exhausted. "What kind of questions?" "About your pregnancy, about the baby, about Miguel." Rosa set down a container of rice with more force than necessary. "She called me Tuesday night wanting to know if you'd ever mentioned anything about irregularities." "Irregularities?" Elena felt her stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "She wanted to know if you'd ever said anything about the timing of the pregnancy, if you'd ever mentioned that the dates didn't add up right." Elena stared at her aunt, trying to process what she was hearing. "The dates add up perfectly. I know exactly when I got pregnant." "I know that, mija. I told her she was being ridiculous." Rosa sat down across from Elena, her expression troubled. But she kept pushing. "Asked if you'd ever talked about other men you might have been seeing." "Other men?" Elena's voice rose slightly, and she forced herself to lower it so she wouldn't wake Mateo. "Tia, there were no other men. I was with Miguel for 2 years, and I haven't been with anyone since we broke up." "I believe you, Elena, but Marissa seems to have some ideas in her head." "What kind of ideas?" Rosa hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "She's wondering if maybe the baby isn't Miguel's?" The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady herself against the wave of anger and hurt that crashed over her. "She thinks I'm lying about who fathered my child?" "I don't think she knows what she thinks, but she's asking questions and she's not being quiet about it." "Who else has she talked to?" "Your cousin Maria, for sure, maybe others." "She's being subtle about it, framing it as concern for you, wondering if you've been honest with yourself about the timeline." I felt sick. The thought of family members discussing my personal life, questioning my honesty about something as fundamental as my child's parentage, was almost unbearable. "Why would she do this?" Rosa sighed deeply. "Mija, your sister has always had a hard time when good things happen to other people. She's been struggling with Carlos, struggling with work, struggling with her whole life. And here you are, making single motherhood look easy and beautiful. It's not easy. But you make it look that way. You're confident, you're prepared, you have support from friends like David. Marissa sees all of that, and instead of being happy for you, she's looking for ways to tear it down. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. I'd known Marissa could be jealous and competitive, but this felt like a betrayal of a different magnitude entirely. What do I do? You ignore it, Rosa said firmly. You know the truth, and that's all that matters. Let Marissa waste her energy on gossip and speculation. Anyone who really knows you will see through it. But what if she doesn't stop? What if she keeps spreading doubt about Mateo? Rosa reached across the table and took Elena's hands. Then you stand up for yourself and your child. You don't let anyone, not even family, poison the well. After Rosa left, Elena sat herself unable to concentrate on anything. She moved through the motions of caring for Mateo, but her mind kept circling back to her aunt's revelations. The idea that Marissa was actively questioning Mateo's parentage, that she was discussing Elena's personal life with other family members, felt like a violation she couldn't quite comprehend. When Mateo was napping in the afternoon, Elena found herself staring at his sleeping face, searching for resemblances she'd never bothered to look for before. His features were still so undefined, so universally infant-like, that she could convince herself she saw traces of anyone. Did he have Miguel's nose? Her own eyes? Her father's stubborn chin? The exercise felt both pointless and necessary. She knew with absolute certainty that Miguel was Mateo's father. The timing of the pregnancy left no room for doubt, but the fact that she was even having to think about it, that her sister had planted seeds of suspicion that were now taking root in her own mind, filled her with a rage so pure it took her breath away.
Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "How's your Friday going? Need anything?" Elena stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "Can you come over? I need to talk to someone." His response was immediate, "On my way." When David arrived an hour later, Elena told him everything Rosa had revealed. She watched his expression grow increasingly grim as she described Marissa's questions and the growing network of family gossip. "This is insane," he said when she finished. "Anyone who knows you would never doubt your integrity about something like this. But what if the doubt spreads? What if people start looking at Mateo differently, wondering if I've been lying?" David was quiet for a moment, studying Elena's face with the careful attention he usually reserved for assessing patients in crisis. "Elena, you know the truth. That's what matters. But if this escalates, if Marissa keeps pushing these insinuations, you might need to consider more drastic action." "Like what?" "Like proving her wrong in a way that shuts down all speculation permanently." Elena knew what he was suggesting without him having to say it explicitly. A paternity test would provide definitive proof that Mateo was Miguel's child, but it would also legitimize the idea that such proof was necessary. It would mean acknowledging that the doubt Marissa had planted was serious enough to require scientific validation. "I shouldn't have to prove my own honesty to my family," she said quietly. "No, you shouldn't. But sometimes the world isn't fair, and sometimes protecting yourself and your child means doing things you wish you didn't have to do." As Elena sat in her living room that evening, listening to the familiar sounds of her neighborhood settling into night, she felt the secure foundation of her new life beginning to shift. The peace she'd built around herself and Mateo was being threatened by something she'd never anticipated: betrayal from within her own family. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, and Elena pulled Mateo closer, whispering promises into the darkness that she would protect him from whatever storms were coming. But for the first time since bringing him home, she wasn't sure she had the power to keep those promises. 2 weeks later, Elena received the phone call she'd been dreading. Carmen's voice was bright with forced enthusiasm as she announced plans for a family barbecue to officially welcome baby Mateo. "It'll be perfect, mija. Just close family, your aunts, cousins, maybe a few of the neighbors who've been asking to meet the baby. Marissa thinks it's a wonderful idea." Elena shifted Mateo to her other arm, buying time as she processed the implications. A family gathering meant exposure, scrutiny, and questions she wasn't prepared to answer in front of an audience.
Mama, I'm not sure I'm ready for something that big yet. Mateo's still so young and nonsense. He's almost a month old and you can't hide away forever. Besides, everyone is dying to meet him properly. The word properly stuck in Elena's throat, as if the intimate visits from immediate family didn't count, as if Mateo's existence needed to be validated by a larger audience. When are you thinking? This Saturday, I've already called Rosa and Maria. Marissa is helping me plan the menu. Of course she was. Elena felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Can I bring anything? Just yourself and that precious baby. Oh, and Elena? Marissa suggested we ask people to bring cameras. She says we need lots of pictures for Mateo's baby book. After hanging up, Elena sat in her rocking chair with Mateo, sleeping against her chest, trying to shake the feeling that she was being maneuvered into a trap. The emphasis on pictures, the timing so soon after Rosa's warning about Marissa's questions, the insistence that this gathering was somehow necessary, it all felt orchestrated in a way that made her deeply uncomfortable. David arrived that evening with Chinese takeout and immediately noticed her mood. "You look like someone who's received bad news," he said, unpacking containers of lo mein and orange chicken onto her coffee table. "Family barbecue on Saturday, command performance to show off the baby." David paused in his unpacking. "And that's a problem because?" Elena told him about the phone call, about her growing suspicion that the gathering was less about celebration and more about examination. David listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious as she spoke. "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked when she finished. "You would do that?" "Elena, you're one of my closest friends, and Mateo is lucky to have you as his mom. If your family wants to turn what should be a celebration into an interrogation, then yes, you should have backup." The relief Elena felt was immediate and overwhelming. She hadn't realized how isolated she'd been feeling until David offered his support. "Won't that seem weird, bringing a friend to a family gathering?" "You mean bringing the friend who painted the nursery, drove you to doctor's appointments, and has been helping you navigate new parenthood? I think most people would call that normal." Saturday arrived gray and humid, with the kind of oppressive heat that made everything feel more difficult. Elena dressed carefully in a casual sundress that flattered her post-pregnancy figure while remaining practical for nursing. She packed Mateo's diaper bag with military precision, including extra bottles, blankets, and changes of clothes. David picked them up at noon, and Elena felt some of her anxiety ease as they drove toward her mother's house. Having an ally made the prospect of facing whatever Marissa had planned feel manageable. Carmen's backyard was already bustling with activity when they arrived. Elena counted at least 15 people scattered across the patio and lawn, more than the close family gathering her mother had described. Aunt Rosa was manning the grill, while Carmen directed the arrangement of folding tables. Cousin Maria was setting up a drink station, and several neighbors Elena recognized but rarely spoke to were clustered around the food table. And there was Marissa, holding court near the back fence with Carlos and two of Elena's cousins, her laughter carrying across the yard with performative brightness.
"Quite a turnout," David murmured as they walked through the gate. "More than I expected," Elena replied, adjusting Mateo's carrier against her chest. Carmen rushed over immediately, arms outstretched. "There's my grandson. Oh, Elena, he's gotten so big already." Elena submitted to her mother's embrace while scanning the yard. The gathering felt different from typical family barbecues. There was an undercurrent of anticipation, as if everyone was waiting for something specific to happen. "David, how wonderful that you could come," Carmen continued, though Elena caught the slight question in her voice. "Elena mentioned you've been such a help with the baby." "Mateo's lucky to have such a strong mom," David replied smoothly. "I'm just glad I can support them both." Rosa appeared at Elena's elbow, her expression warm, but her eyes sharp with concern. "How are you feeling, mija? You look a little tired." "New mom tired," Elena said lightly, "but we're managing well." "Good, that's what matters." Rosa's gaze flicked toward Marissa's group before returning to Elena. "Remember what we talked about. You know what's true." Over the next hour, Elena found herself the center of a constant stream of visitors wanting to meet Mateo. Most of the attention felt genuine,
Relatives cooing over his tiny fingers, neighbors sharing stories of their own children's infant days, family friends offering practical advice about sleep schedules and feeding routines. But Elena couldn't shake the feeling that some of the interactions carried a different weight. Cousin Sophia spent an unusually long time studying Mateo's face, making comments about how interesting it was that babies could look so different from both parents initially. Neighbor Mrs. Gutierrez asked pointed questions about the pregnancy timeline, framing her curiosity as concern about whether Elena had received adequate prenatal care. And through it all, Marissa watched from a distance, occasionally joining conversations but never directly engaging with Elena or asking to hold Mateo. Her absence felt more pointed than her presence would have. The explosion came during dessert, when most of the guests were relaxed and full, their guard down from good food and afternoon heat. Elena was sitting at one of the folding tables with David, Aunt Rosa, and Cousin Maria, bouncing Mateo gently on her lap while the others shared stories about childhood summers. "He really is a beautiful baby," Maria was saying, reaching over to touch Mateo's soft cheek. "Those eyes are going to be heartbreakers when he's older." "Just like his mama's," Aunt Rosa added with a fond smile. That's when Marissa's voice cut across the conversation, loud enough for the entire backyard to hear. "You know, I've been thinking about those eyes." Elena looked up to find her sister standing a few feet away, arms crossed, expression serious in a way that made Elena's stomach clench. "What about them?" Rosa asked, her tone carefully neutral. "They don't look like Elena's. Or Miguel's, for that matter." Marissa moved closer to the table, and Elena noticed that conversations around the yard had begun to quiet as people sensed tension building. "David, Marissa," Elena said quietly, "not now." "When then? When are we going to talk about the elephant in the room?" David shifted slightly in his chair, and Elena felt him tense beside her. What elephant would that be? Marissa's gaze flicked to David with barely concealed hostility, the fact that Elena has been lying about this baby's father. The words dropped into the sudden silence like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock across the gathering. "Excuse me?" Elena's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking as she instinctively pulled Mateo closer to her chest. "You heard me." Marissa's voice had the righteous tone of someone who believed they were exposing an important truth. "The timeline doesn't add up, Elena. I've done the math." "What math?" This from Rosa, her voice sharp with warning. "Miguel left town in February. Elena didn't announce her pregnancy until May. That's 3 months, Rosa. 3 months where she could have been with anyone." Elena felt the world tilt around her. The casual conversations that had been happening throughout the yard had stopped completely now, leaving only the sound of traffic from the street and the distant hum of someone's air conditioning unit. "Marissa, you need to stop talking right now," David said, his voice low and dangerous. "Why? Because I'm telling the truth? Because I'm asking questions everyone else is too polite to ask?" Carmen appeared at the edge of the group, her face pale with mortification. "Marissa, what are you doing?" "I'm protecting our family from being deceived." Marissa's voice was rising now, taking on the fervent tone of someone who had convinced herself she was performing a noble service. "Elena has been lying to all of us about this baby's paternity, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise." Elena stood up slowly, Mateo still cradled against her chest. She could feel the weight of every stare, could sense phones being pulled out to record what was clearly becoming a family drama worth sharing. "You want to do this here?" Elena asked, her voice quiet but carrying clearly across the yard. "You want to humiliate me in front of our entire family based on your math?" "I want the truth, Elena. I think this family deserves the truth. The truth is that you're jealous and cruel, and you're trying to destroy something beautiful because you can't stand to see me happy." Marissa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Happy? You think lying to your family about who fathered your child is going to make you happy? What happens when he grows up and realizes his whole life was built on deception?" Elena felt something snap inside her chest. The careful control she had maintained throughout weeks of whispers and innuendo finally broke, releasing a flood of rage so pure it took her breath away.
"How dare you?" she said, her voice carrying across the silent yard. "How dare you question my integrity, my honesty, my love for my child? How dare you turn what should be a celebration into your personal opportunity for cruelty?" "Then prove me wrong," Marissa shot back. "If you're so sure, if it's all so straightforward, then prove it. Get a paternity test." The challenge hung in the air between them, witnessed by 24 family members and neighbors who would never forget this moment. Elena understood with crystal clarity that she was being backed into a corner, forced to legitimize doubt that should never have existed in the first place. The ride home was silent, except for Mateo's soft breathing and the hum of David's air conditioning. Elena stared out the window at familiar streets that somehow looked different now, as if her sister's public accusation had changed the very landscape of her life. David didn't speak until they were inside her apartment. Mateo settled in his crib for what would hopefully be a long nap after the overstimulation of the afternoon. "I'm sorry," he said finally, settling onto her couch while Elena paced the small living room like a caged animal. "For what? You didn't do anything wrong." "For witnessing that. For not being able to stop it somehow." Elena paused in her pacing, looking at David's stricken expression. "You couldn't have stopped it. She's been building toward this for weeks. Today was just when she decided to pull the trigger. What are you going to do?" The question Elena had been avoiding finally demanded an answer. She could try to ignore what had happened, could hope that family loyalty would eventually override the doubt Marissa had planted. But she knew better. The seed of suspicion had been watered with public humiliation and would only grow stronger with time. "I'm going to get the paternity test," she said quietly. David nodded slowly. "When?" "As soon as possible. I can't live under this cloud, and I won't let Mateo grow up with questions about his parentage hanging over his head." "Do you need help contacting Miguel?" Elena had been dreading this part. Miguel had made it clear he wanted no involvement in Mateo's life, and reaching out to ask for a DNA sample would require reopening communication she'd allowed to close permanently. "I'll figure it out. He's not exactly eager to hear from me, but he'll probably agree to the test if it means putting this to rest once and for all." David was quiet for a long moment, studying Elena's face with the careful attention she'd learned to associate with his most serious concerns. "Elena, you know this is insane, right? You shouldn't have to prove your own honesty to your family." "No, I shouldn't. But here we are. And after the test proves what we already know, that Miguel is Mateo's father, then what? Do you really think Marissa is going to apologize? Do you think she's going to admit she was wrong and cruel and destructive?" Elena considered this. She'd been so focused on the immediate problem of clearing her name that she hadn't thought beyond the vindication the test would provide. "I don't know. Maybe not. But at least the doubt will be gone. At least Mateo will grow up knowing that any questions about his parentage were answered definitively. And if Miguel refuses to take the test? The possibility Elena hadn't wanted to consider. If Miguel refused to provide a DNA sample, she'd be left in the impossible position of being unable to prove what everyone should have simply believed. "He won't refuse," she said with more confidence than she felt. "He's not a bad person, David. He's just not ready to be a father. But he wouldn't leave me hanging like this." That evening, after David left and Mateo was settled for the night, Elena sat at her kitchen table with her phone, staring at Miguel's contact information. She'd deleted his number months ago, but had memorized it during their 2 years together. Her fingers hovered over the keypad as she tried to find words for a conversation she'd never imagined having. Finally, she typed, "Miguel, it's Elena. I need to talk to you about something important regarding the baby. Can you call me when you have a few minutes?" The response came faster than she had expected. "Is everything okay? Is the baby sick?" Despite everything that had passed between them, Miguel's immediate concern for Mateo's well-being made her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "He's healthy, but I need to ask you for something, and it's complicated. Can you call?" Her phone rang within minutes.
Elena? What's going on? Miguel's voice was exactly as she remembered it. Warm, slightly accented, tinged with the concern that had always been his most appealing quality. Hearing it again after months of silence felt like reopening a wound that had just begun to heal. "I need you to take a paternity test," she said without preamble, knowing that any attempt to ease into the request would only make it more painful. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough that Elena wondered if the call had dropped. "Miguel? Are you there?" "I'm here. Why? I thought we settled this. I told you I wasn't ready to be involved." "This isn't about involvement. It's about proof." Elena explained the situation as briefly as possible. Marissa's accusations, the family gathering, the public challenge that had left her with no choice but to respond. "Your own sister thinks you're lying about the baby's father?" Miguel's voice carried a mixture of disbelief and anger that Elena found oddly comforting. "She's been planting doubt for weeks. Today was just when she decided to pull the trigger." "That's insane, Elena. You were never with anyone else while we were together." "I know that. You know that. But now, I need to prove it to everyone else." Miguel was quiet again, and Elena could almost hear him thinking through the implications of what she was asking.
If I do this, if I take the test, it's not going to change anything about my involvement with the baby. You understand that, right? I understand. I'm not asking you to be a father, Miguel. I'm asking you to help me prove the truth. When do you need this done? As soon as possible. I can make the arrangements and send you the information. Okay. Send me whatever I need to sign or do. But, Elena, yes? I'm sorry your family is putting you through this. You don't deserve it. After they hung up, Elena felt a mixture of relief and sadness that surprised her with its intensity. Miguel's willingness to help, his immediate belief in her honesty reminded her of the good parts of their relationship that had made the ending so painful. But more than that, his response had validated what she'd known all along, that the doubt surrounding Mateo's parentage was entirely manufactured, a product of Marissa's jealousy rather than any legitimate concern about the truth. Now all she had to do was wait for science to prove what love had already made clear, that Mateo was exactly who she said he was, and that some truths were too fundamental to require validation from anyone else. The DNA testing facility was a sterile, beige-walled office tucked between a tax preparation service and a cell phone repair shop. Elena sat in the waiting room with Mateo on her lap, watching other families navigate their own complicated situations. A teenage girl with worried parents, an older man who kept checking his watch nervously, a young couple holding hands but avoiding eye contact. She'd scheduled Mateo's sample collection for Tuesday morning, 3 days after the barbecue confrontation. Miguel had already completed his part at a facility in Phoenix, sending Elena a photo of his confirmation paperwork with a text that simply said, "Done. Hope this helps." The cheek swab process was quick and painless. Mateo barely stirred as the technician gently rubbed the cotton swab against the inside of his mouth, sealing the sample in a labeled vial that would determine his genetic future. Results typically take 3 to 5 business days, the technician explained, as Elena filled out the final paperwork. You can access them online with this secure code, or we can mail you a physical copy. Elena chose the online option. She wanted to see the results immediately, in private, before deciding how to share them with her family. The waiting period that followed was the longest week of Elena's life. Every phone ring made her jump, expecting news that wasn't coming. She found herself checking the testing company's website multiple times a day, even though she knew the results wouldn't be ready yet. David stopped by Wednesday evening with pizza and moral support. He found Elena obsessively cleaning her already immaculate apartment while Mateo dozed in his bouncer. "You know scrubbing the baseboards isn't going to make the results come back faster," he observed, settling in onto her couch with a slice of pepperoni. "I need to keep busy. If I sit still for too long, I start thinking about what happens if—" Elena caught herself before finishing the thought. "If what? If the test somehow proves that Miguel isn't Mateo's father? Elena, that's impossible. You know when you conceived. You know who you were with. Science is going to confirm what you already know. But what if there was some mistake at the lab? What if the samples got mixed up? What if—"
David stood up and gently took the cleaning supplies from Elena's hands, guiding her to sit beside him on the couch. Listen to me. You are not going crazy. You're not being paranoid. Your sister planted seeds of doubt designed to make you question your own memory, your own truth. That's what emotional abuse looks like. It makes you doubt reality itself. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. I just want this to be over. It will be. And when it is, you're going to have to decide how you want to handle the aftermath. Because Marissa isn't going to disappear just because the test proves she was wrong. Thursday brought a call from Carmen, the first contact Elena had received from her family since the barbecue disaster. Mija, how are you holding up? Elena's response was carefully measured. I'm managing. I haven't been able to sleep since Saturday. I keep thinking about what happened, about the things Marissa said. And what have you concluded? I think your sister has been very unhappy, and unhappy people sometimes lash out in ways that hurt everyone around them. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was closer to support than Elena had expected. The results should be ready soon, Elena said. You shouldn't have had to do that, Elena. I should have stopped Marissa before things went that far. Why didn't you? Another long pause. Because a small part of me wondered if maybe there was something I didn't know about your situation. And I'm ashamed of that doubt, Elena. I'm ashamed that I let anyone make me question my own daughter's honesty. Elena felt a crack in the wall of hurt she'd built around herself since Saturday. Her mother's admission wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and it acknowledged the pain Elena had been carrying. The results will prove what I've been saying all along, Mama. And then we can put this behind us. I hope so, Mija. I really hope so. Friday morning at 9:47 a.m., Elena's phone buzzed with an email notification. Your DNA test results are ready for viewing. Elena was feeding Mateo his morning bottle when the message arrived. Her hands began to shake so violently that she had to set both the phone and the baby down to steady herself. She called David immediately. The results are in, she said without preamble when he answered. Do you want me to come over? Yes, please. I can't look at them alone.
David arrived within 20 minutes, finding Elena pacing her living room while Mateo played contentedly in his bouncer, oblivious to the moment that would define his family's future. Ready? David asked, settling beside Elena on the couch with her laptop balanced between them. Elena nodded, though she felt anything but ready. She entered her secure access code with trembling fingers and watched the page load with agonizing slowness. The results appeared in stark black text against a white background. Paternity test results. Child, Mateo Ramirez. Alleged father, Miguel Santos. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. Conclusion. Miguel Santos is the biological father of Mateo Ramirez. Elena stared at the screen for a full 30 seconds before the words penetrated her consciousness. Then she burst into tears, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of having her truth validated by unquestionable science. It's over, she whispered against David's shoulder as he pulled her into a hug. It's finally over. But even as she said the words, Elena knew they weren't entirely true. The test had proven her honesty, but it hadn't erased the damage Marissa had done to their family relationships. It hadn't undone the public humiliation or restored the trust that had been broken. It was vindication, but not necessarily healing. Elena screenshotted the results and forwarded them to Miguel with a simple message. Thank you for helping me prove the truth. His response came quickly. I never doubted you, Elena. I hope this gives you the peace you deserve. Then she called her mother. The results are in, Mama. And Elena's mother paused. Miguel is Mateo's father, 99.97% certainty. Carmen was quiet for so long that Elena wondered if the call had dropped. When her mother finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. I'm so sorry, Mija.
I'm so sorry I let doubt creep into my heart, even for a moment. I'm sorry I didn't defend you the way I should have. I forgive you, Mama. But I need you to understand that things can't go back to the way they were. Not with Marissa, and not with the family dynamics that allowed this to happen. What do you mean? I mean that I won't be attending family gatherings where Marissa is present until she apologizes publicly for what she did. I won't subject myself or Mateo to her toxicity, and I won't pretend that what happened was just a misunderstanding. Carmen sighed deeply. She's my daughter too, Elena. I can't just cut her out of my life. I'm not asking you to do that, but I am asking you to stop enabling her behavior and expecting me to absorb her cruelty for the sake of family peace. Elena didn't have to wait long for Marissa's reaction. Her sister showed up at her apartment Saturday afternoon, unannounced and clearly agitated. Elena watched through the peephole as Marissa paced outside her door, building up courage for a conversation she clearly didn't want to have. When Elena finally opened the door, she didn't invite Marissa inside. I heard about the test results, Marissa said without greeting, her usual confidence replaced by defensive belligerence. I'm sure you did. So, Miguel is the father. Fine. You were right. I was wrong. Are you happy now? Elena studied her sister's face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse behind the grudging admission. She found none. Happy? Marissa, do you understand what you put me through? What our entire family through? You publicly humiliated me based on nothing but your own jealousy and spite. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to protect... Stop. Elena's voice cut through Marissa's attempted justification. Don't lie to me, and don't lie to yourself. You weren't protecting anyone. You were trying to tear down something beautiful because you couldn't stand to see me succeeding at something you've never even attempted. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I was jealous. I'm 29 years old, I've been with Carlos for 3 years, and I can't even get him to discuss marriage seriously. Meanwhile, you decide you want a baby and just make it happen. Alone. Like, it's the easiest thing in the world. It's not easy, Marissa. Nothing about this has been easy. But you make it look easy. You make everything look easy. Your career, your independence, now motherhood. And everyone treats you like some kind of hero for choosing to be a single mother, while I get pitying looks because I can't get my boyfriend to commit. Elena felt a flicker of sympathy for her sister's pain, but it was quickly overwhelmed by anger at the destruction Marissa had caused in service of her own insecurities. So you decided to destroy my reputation and traumatize my nephew because you're unhappy with your own choices? I didn't think it would go that far. I thought maybe if people started asking questions, you'd admit that you weren't as sure about everything as you pretended to be. Admit what, exactly? That I was lying about my child's parentage? That I was deceiving our entire family about something fundamental to his identity? Marissa looked away, finally seeming to grasp the magnitude of what she had attempted to do. I just wanted you to be less perfect. I was never perfect, Marissa. I was just trying to build a life that made me happy. And instead of celebrating that or trying to build your own happiness, you decided to tear mine down. Elena stepped back toward her door, signaling that the conversation was over. I need you to leave now, and I need you to understand that until you're ready to take full responsibility for what you did, not just to me, but to Mateo, to Mama, to our entire family, we have nothing more to say to each other.
As Elena closed the door on her sister's stricken face, she felt the final pieces of her old family dynamic crumbling away. It was painful, but it was also liberating. She'd proven her truth, protected her child, and established boundaries that would prevent future betrayals. Now she could focus on building the life she and Mateo deserved, one founded on honesty, surrounded by people who believed in her, and free from the toxic patterns that had nearly destroyed everything she held dear. 3 months later, Elena stood in her kitchen making coffee while Mateo gurgled contentedly in his high chair, batting at colorful toys suspended above him. The morning routine that had once felt overwhelming now flowed with practiced ease. Bottle preparation, diaper changes, and the small conversations she carried on with her son throughout their daily rituals. The apartment felt different now, lighter somehow. Elena had redecorated the living room, replacing family photos that included Marissa with new pictures of herself and Mateo, David, Aunt Rosa, and the chosen family she'd built around her son. The painful reminders of betrayal had been carefully curated out, leaving only images of love and support. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Coffee date at 10? I have news." Elena smiled as she typed back, "Always. Mateo's been asking about his Uncle David all morning." Their friendship had deepened considerably over the past months. David had become Mateo's honorary godfather, the male presence in their small family who read bedtime stories in silly voices and never missed an important milestone. Elena sometimes wondered if their relationship was evolving into something more romantic, but she was in no hurry to define it. For now, having someone who loved both her and Mateo unconditionally was enough. Carmen had been working to rebuild their relationship, visiting weekly and making genuine efforts to support Elena's parenting choices without criticism. The reconciliation wasn't complete. There were still moments when Elena felt the lingering sting of her mother's initial doubt, but they were making progress. "I've been thinking about what you said," Carmen had told her the week before, "about family dynamics and enabling behavior. I signed up for counseling. I want to understand how I let things get so bad between you and Marissa." Elena had been proud of her mother's courage in facing uncomfortable truths about their family patterns. It gave her hope that real healing was possible, even if it took time. Marissa remained conspicuously absent from Elena's life. According to Carmen, she and Carlos had finally broken up, and Marissa was living with a friend while she figured out her next steps. She'd made no further attempts to contact Elena or apologize for her behavior at the barbecue. Elena had made peace with the possibility that her sister might never take responsibility for the pain she'd caused. When David arrived at 10, he was carrying flowers and wearing the kind of smile that meant he had genuinely exciting news to share. "Okay, spill," Elena said, settling Mateo in his bouncer, while David arranged the sunflowers in a vase. "I got the promotion, head of pediatric nursing." Elena jumped up and hugged him, genuinely thrilled. "David, that's incredible. You've worked so hard for this." The interview panel was impressed by my community involvement and mentorship experience. Apparently, helping new parents navigate the system counts as leadership development. Elena laughed, knowing that David's community involvement included countless hours supporting her through pregnancy and new motherhood, not to mention painting nurseries and providing emotional support during family crises. "You deserve this. You're going to be amazing." The position comes with better hours and a significant raise, which means I can help more with Mateo when you go back to work next month. Elena felt a familiar flutter of anxiety about returning to work, leaving Mateo with a babysitter for the first time. David's offer eased some of that worry. "You don't have to. I want to. You two are my family, Elena. This is what families do for each other." As Elena watched David make faces at Mateo, who responded with delighted giggles, she reflected on how much her definition of family had changed over the past year. Biology created connections, but choice created bonds. The people who showed up consistently, who believed in her truth without requiring proof, who celebrated her victories and supported her through challenges, those were her real family. Her phone rang, and Aunt Rosa's name appeared on the screen. "Mija, I have gossip. Are you sitting down?" "I'm listening." "Your cousin Sophia saw Marissa at the grocery store yesterday. She tried to talk to Sophia about misunderstandings and wanting to repair family relationships. Sophia told her that if she wanted to repair anything, she should start with a public apology to you."
Elena smiled at Rosa's obvious satisfaction in reporting this encounter. Her aunt had become even more fiercely protective since the DNA test revelation. What did Marisa say to that? That it was complicated and Sophia wouldn't understand. Sophia told her that hurting family members and then refusing to apologize isn't complicated at all. It's just selfish. Elena felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. Part of her still hoped that Marisa would eventually recognize the magnitude of her betrayal and make genuine amends. But she was no longer waiting for that apology to live her life fully. Thanks for telling me, Thea, but honestly, I'm done worrying about what Marisa does or doesn't do. I have more important things to focus on. After Rosa hung up, Elena returned to the living room where David was teaching Mateo to stack soft blocks. Her son's laughter filled the space with pure joy, and she felt the deep contentment that came from knowing she'd protected what mattered most. The DNA test had proven her truth, but more importantly, it had freed her from the burden of other people's doubt. She'd learned to trust her own instincts, to surround herself with people who believed in her, and to build a life based on love rather than the approval of those who would never be satisfied. As Mateo reached for her with chubby arms, Elena realized that this was what victory looked like. Not dramatic vindication or public apologies, but the quiet triumph of a life well lived, surrounded by genuine love and unshakable truth. She was exactly where she belonged.